All right, we are recording. So welcome again, everyone, to this UCR Library workshop on the top 5 tools for sharing your research online. So I wanted to start off by just acknowledging this is a really difficult time. We're dealing with multiple crises. So I wanted to acknowledge that the pandemic and other structural inequalities have disproportionately affected people of color, particularly Black and Indigenous peoples. And just share that, as members of the UCR community, we stand with Black Lives Matter against racial injustice, police brutality, and other human rights violations. We also recognize our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, as well as their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. And while we're currently meeting in digital spaces, I do invite you all to learn, if you aren't in Riverside, whose ancestral lands you might be physically located on, at this link here on the slide. So just to say, we're all still adjusting to remote work and life and research. So for this workshop, please do what's best for you, engage any way you're comfortable, and I'm available if you have questions, to follow up afterwards as well. So today, the focus will be on, rather than kind of a deep dive into each of these different platforms and online tools for sharing research, I wanted to kind of just give an overview of a bunch of different tools that are out there and what each one kind of does best, different kinds of research you might want to share on these different platforms, and just kind of a broad overview of the value of sharing research online through these different ways. So I wanted to start off with a poll question for folks who are joining us here live, as far as which of these tools you may have used before. So that should be showing up on everyone's screens. And if you've used other tools to share your research, feel free to share those in the chat as well. All right, go ahead and end that. It looks like we have users of the Open Science Framework, which is cool. So we'll look at that one as well as these others that might be useful for other kinds of projects. So we'll talk about these different platforms, but before we jump into that, I just realized I didn't formally introduce myself. I'm Rachel Starry. I'm the Digital Scholarship Librarian in the UCR Library. So I have my contact information on the screen here. This is one of many workshops that Research Services offers, so I encourage you to go to the library website to see if there are other workshops that might be useful to you. And again, I have the link to the slides here on the screen if you want to follow along. So before we dive into those different platforms, I wanted to kind of just take a minute and acknowledge and ask this question of, why should we even be thinking about sharing our research openly? What are the benefits, to us as researchers or to our colleagues or society? So I have this quote here from PLOS, they're an open access publisher, that open research really just benefits society really broadly. So by providing immediate and unrestricted access to the latest research, we can accelerate discovery and create a more equitable system of knowledge that is open to all. In addition, several studies have been conducted on the kind of practical and even career-related benefits of sharing research openly. I just have one of those studies cited here, but they found that open publications are cited more frequently. Open research is associated with increases in citations, as well as media attention, potential collaborators, job opportunities, and funding opportunities. Another, and kind of part of that was mentioned in that particular quote, was that when you're sharing your research online, it makes it easier for people to find your research, and that can lead to more collaborations, right? So open science, open research of all kind can lead to greater collaboration, increased findings, increased confidence in findings, and goodwill between researchers. And then the very last kind of reason I wanted to draw attention to was, of course, in the US since 2013, I believe, there have been federal policies that do mandate the public release of articles and data for some research by different agencies that is funded by different agencies. So I have two links here to different databases. One is for finding the specific article sharing requirements by the different federal agencies. You know, if your research is funded by NSF or NIH or NEH. And then I have another link to the data sharing requirements, which can be different by the different federal agencies. Okay, so now we'll turn to look at the individual platforms. So the very first one that we're going to look at is kind of specific to the University of California system. And that is UC eScholarship. So eScholarship, and for each of these, we're going to kind of look at what they are, what they're really designed to do, what they're best at, who's able to use them, and then I'll share some resources for each of them. And if we have questions as we go along, please feel free to ask in the chat. And yeah, so for eScholarship, this is kind of, it's primarily an open access repository. It has this kind of secondary function of being a publishing platform. And you can use it to upload journals, articles, working papers, theses and dissertations, student capstone projects, as well as paper or seminar series. And in terms of who can use it, anyone who is affiliated with UC departments, research units, publishing programs, as well as just all researchers in the UC system, faculty and students. So I have an image here of one of the journals that's actually locally hosted at the University of California Riverside campus. It's our undergraduate research journal. So that is an example of how this platform is being used for local publishing. So we'll look at the platform in just a second. I'll follow that link. But in general, eScholarship as an institutional repository is best for sharing a copy of your scholarly articles in order to comply with UC's open access policies. eScholarship is also fantastic for just making your scholarly publications more discoverable and accessible by putting copies of them in that repository. It's also a place where you can go and find research by UC students and authors. And those are all the kind of repository functions of eScholarship, but it's also a platform that's available to use to create open access journals or even publishing things like conference proceedings. So we'll go ahead and move over to eScholarship just so we can see what it looks like. And as I mentioned, it's for the entire UC system, but this page in particular is the University Riverside's particular page. You can find eScholarship pages for all the other campuses pretty easily here. There's also really prominently a link to the open access policies because that's one of the major purposes of this kind of repository is to really collect and make more broadly accessible to the world UC research. So if you scroll down, you'll see that there's lots of items in here. These are all the kind of articles and papers and things people have uploaded to this repository. And we're also at Riverside hosting 5 eScholarship journals. So that includes the undergraduate research journal that I have an image of on the slide. And I'll also point out that our campus contact for eScholarship, if you have specific questions, is Brianna Marshall, the Director of Research Services here in the library. So if you have particular questions, do feel free to contact either me or Brianna about using eScholarship. Oops. Find the, yeah, there we go. All right. Are there any questions about using eScholarship specifically? And I'll look at the chat. Well, if you have questions about this or any others, feel free to drop them in the chat at any time and I will check throughout the workshop. All right, so the second tool on this list is Dryad, and it is another, not specific to UC, but supported through the University of California system, through the California Digital Library. So Dryad is, whereas eScholarship is really specifically, or maybe more generally for different kinds of research outputs like articles and papers, research posters, things like that. Dryad is really specifically for data. So it's an open source repository that makes your research data discoverable really reusable and citable. And I think the citable piece is one of the most important ones to kind of talk about. So who can use it? This one's not limited to just UC researchers. Anyone can use Dryad, but because UCR has an institutional membership in Dryad, anyone who is affiliated with UCR faculty and students, you don't have to pay data publishing charges if you want to deposit your data in Dryad. So again, Dryad is really specifically best for sharing research data. And I'll note here that it's intended specifically for data that you don't place additional restrictions on the reuse of. So it's required when you put data in Dryad to share it under a CC0, Creative Commons 0, which is a public domain license, which just allows the free reuse of the data under the kind of general understanding that, data is not copyrightable. But you might have, data that's got personally identifiable information. There might be other reasons why you can't share your data under a public domain license. So that's just something to keep in mind. But if you're able to use Dryad, it's fantastic for making your research data more discoverable and accessible, particularly because it undergoes kind of active curation versus if you use certain kinds of data repositories, you might put the data there, and some of the other platforms we'll look at today you can use as repositories. What's really nice about Dryad is that there are data curators whose job it is to kind of look at the data as you upload it, make sure all the information is there that's going to make it useful for other people to find and reuse. It's also a fantastic resource to know about if you need to, for example, share your data in order to comply with publisher or funder requirements. A lot of times if you are publishing a paper that has an accompanying data set, and the publisher doesn't themselves have a way to do data publication, they will require you to find a place like Dryad to upload your data and make it accessible and kind of preserved in the long term. So I have some resources here in terms of just basic information, what kinds of data can I upload to Dryad? How do I need to get my data prepared for that? So that's here at the Dryad FAQ. And they also have some resources if you're interested in learning more about what goes into making data FAIR. It's the acronym for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So those are that's a fantastic resource as well. So if we just go over to what Dryad looks like, again, anyone can upload their data here. It's not limited to UC researchers, but you don't have to pay the data publishing fee if you use Dryad. So you can log in using your ORCID ID. So if you're not familiar with what an ORCID ID is, you can, it's basically a free, it's a free tool. It's a unique identifier that you can get as a researcher to help distinguish you from other people who might have similar names. If you have a common surname or something like that, you can attach this ID to all of your research. And then it's easy to find all the work that you have done online just for this one ID. Are there any questions specifically about Dryad? All right, I'll keep an eye on the chat in case any more come through. All right, so the third platform on the list today is OSF, the Open Science Framework. And the very first thing that I want to say about OSF is that it's not just for scientists. Anyone can use OSF. My background's in archaeology. I use OSF. I use OSF as part of my work in the libraries as well. We'll look at a couple of example sites in terms of how people are using this in different fields. But it is an open source project management platform. It was developed by the Center for Open Science. It's completely free to use. And it's really useful to work on projects either independently or collaboratively. And you can keep your projects private, or it's fantastic to use to share your project files publicly. Anyone can use it. As I said, it's not just for scientists. And it's great for managing collaboration and just sharing research files in any discipline. So what I think OSF is really fantastic at, like it stands out above all the other tools on this list at being a place where you can integrate and organize your research materials that might live in lots of different places. So maybe you have research files in a Google Drive or in an institutional, Box drive, or actually I'll go to the next slide, and this has a list of all the different storage locations that you can pull in stuff from. So say you have information, data, files, PDFs, whatever you want that relates to your research in Dataverse or Dropbox or Microsoft OneDrive. It's possible to pull in all of those different materials into one OSF project and kind of have a central repository for them. I don't know of any other research sharing platforms that really do that. It's also really fantastic for helping keep track of and documenting, if you have a collaborative project, what all the different team members are contributing and doing to that project. This is really useful, I think, if you're working with students in a lab, really in a lot of different scenarios. It's useful to automate the process of seeing, so-and-so went in and made changes to this wiki, so-and-so uploaded this PDF, and it tracks, when and who for all of those different changes to the project. It also, like GitHub, which we'll see in a minute, enables automatic version control for your research files. So if you pull stuff in and you upload a PDF, to your OSF project storage, and then you upload a new version, it automates that. And it also has some built-in analytics tracking to help you see, how many people have downloaded my files. It's got some built-in analytics like that. So let's go on over to look at what OSF looks like. So these are UCR specific projects on OSF. And you can also log into OSF with your ORCID ID, like we saw with Dryad. So if we just go to a project, we can see what this interface looks like. So here we have a project where we have lots of contributors, and all projects can be licensed in different ways. So it automatically generates a citation for your project. You can create lots of different components of a project, so you can organize. These are kind of like, folders that you can organize different, materials into. So here we have, on this project, they've linked a Google Drive that has images in it. They also have just general OSF storage where they've uploaded PDFs, as well as, this is, I guess, a conference. So they have, speakers have uploaded their slides or presentations. So, and here again is where it tracks all the different contributions by each individual person who has added to this project. So it automatically will track all of this information. Another thing I'll mention about OSF, as we look up here on the toolbar for OSF, it says OSF Home. There are a couple of additional services or tools that OSF offers. So I have a slide about those additional tools. So there are more than just these two tools, but I wanted to mention these in particular as we looked at eScholarship and Dryad and other tools. So OSF has what they call OSF Meetings, which is essentially a free poster and presentation sharing service, specifically for academic meetings and conferences. So as we just saw, conference organizers can create a page, a project for an event to both broaden its impact and preserve, the papers and posters and slides. And then OSF preprints is really specifically for, it's a repository for article preprints. And if you're not familiar with that terminology, a preprint is just the version of your article before it goes through that peer review and revision process, which can often take a really long time. The academic publishing process can be super slow in some disciplines. So you can use OSF preprints to fulfill sometimes the requirement that you share your research open access. If you are wanting to use something other than eScholarship, you can put it in both places. Preprints, I'll note, if you upload your preprint, it will be assigned a DOI, a digital object identifier, which is a permanent link to it, so you can share that, and it will be preserved in OSF as long as OSF exists. And they have a really fantastic current levels of funding. they can preserve stuff for 50 years. I just got a notification that my audio quality is poor. Is anyone else having trouble hearing me? Or is my microphone doing something weird?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, I'll keep going. But if things get weird, let me know. I do have an issue with the microphone on this computer, and I know bandwidth can be an issue sometimes with the quality. So I'll keep going. So I just wanted to make a note that preprints in particular will be made public immediately, and you can update them, but you can't delete them. So it's worth keeping that in mind. Again, if you're a UC affiliated researcher, I would recommend eScholarship as the best place, but it's nice to know that this exists as well. Okay, I see a question about OSF. So for these projects, is it public so everyone can see them? Yes. So you can choose whether your projects are private or public. And what's really nice about OSF is that you can collaborate on private projects. So you don't have to make things public if you don't want to make them public, but at any point you can choose to make a project that is private into a public project. On some platforms like GitHub, which we'll look at next, the ability to privately collaborate on projects is restricted to only if you pay for like the premium version. And I should say GitHub is the only tool on this list that is proprietary. It's owned by Microsoft. So it's not strictly an open source platform, but it is free as an industry standard. So it's why I mention it. Another question from Margarita about OSF. Can you choose portions of the project to make public as opposed to the whole project? Yes. So you can choose, again, you can organize your projects into these different components. And if I was logged in, you would see that certain components of my public projects have a little lock symbol here. So you can choose, I want the agenda to be public, but I want conference photos to be private. So you can absolutely control those different levels of public and private. Any other questions about OSF? And I know I'm blowing through these really quickly, but we can come back and kind of dig into any of these that are of more interest to you all. Okay. We'll keep going. So next on the list is GitHub. So again, GitHub's a bit different than the other programs that we're looking at today, specifically because it is not open source. It is a proprietary hosting platform. It was designed specifically for collaborative software development and version control. So it does those things really, really well. But I include it here because it is also useful as a more general platform for sharing your research, particularly through what are called GitHub pages. So pages is a feature of GitHub, the platform, that lets you host free websites, static websites, not super dynamic ones like WordPress or Drupal will let you make, but it will let you host websites directly from GitHub repositories. So you can use plain HTML. There's also other ways to use pages to kind of create really nice looking websites. So it's fantastic for anyone. And again, who can use it? It's not just for software developers. You can use it to host, a personal or professional website. You can use it to share files with collaborators and work on projects together. So in comparison to the others, GitHub is certainly, it stands out for being great at sharing code and automating version control for code repositories if you're doing software or code development. But it's also, and I have here as the top bullet item, kind of thinking back to OSF. OSF is really great at like finding stuff that lives all over the place and bringing it together, centralizing it. GitHub's really good for sharing materials that you need to work on frequently or that are kind of ongoing. They're like live research materials versus eScholarship, Dryad, other places that are primarily repositories that you deposit stuff. Sometimes you can update it, but it's really intended for finished research. GitHub's great for active, ongoing research, and it does that automatic version control as well as controlling for, or if multiple people are working on the same file, You can manage merging changes and all of that. And that's more complex than we'll get into today. But if you're interested, let me know. I'd be happy to plan something, a workshop or something on GitHub. And in fact, if you don't want to use GitHub, the proprietary platform, Git, the underlying language that is used to run GitHub, that is open source. And there's actually a library workshop this Friday that I believe is full, it has a waiting list, run by Kat Koziar, our data librarian. So she's teaching a workshop on using Git to collaborate and manage your code repositories, things like that. So if you're interested, again, check out the library website for other events. I'll also mention here that GitHub is another platform that does that automatic kind of tracking of, if you're working on a collaborative project, you know, who's contributing to the code. So let's go ahead and just go over to GitHub. If folks haven't, oh, so I am logged in. Okay, apologies. This is my personal view. So let me just go to a page or one of my repositories to demonstrate this. So you can use GitHub for code, but you can also use it for many other purposes. So personally, I've used it to create like tutorials and resources, learning resources, things like that. So it can be a teaching tool as well as a kind of research collaboration tool. Actually, if I go back to a different, oh, you know what? It's not listed in the short list. There it is. So I have a tutorial on here, and what's also great about GitHub is it has this, this process for automatically forking, basically duplicating other people's repositories that are licensed openly. So I have a Creative Commons attribution license on this particular tutorial, because that was the attribution on the original tutorial that I copied to make this one. And actually, so Miriam Posner's a faculty member at UCLA. So she made this original tutorial, and I copied it. There's actually, I think, oops, no, I did not. I just want to see the forks. Several other people have also forked this repository of hers to create their own tutorials that might be tailored to their own institutions. So that's just useful to know about as well. GitHub Pages. There are several different options for using GitHub Pages. Like I said, you could just use straight HTML pages. Everyone gets one organizational or account-based GitHub.io domain. So, for example, I have a website. I have a website hosted on GitHub Pages. And this is what the repository looks like. And then this is the actual website that is hosted using this repository for free. So this is built using Jekyll and Hugo, and there's a couple of other options for deploying static websites using simple markdown syntax, and it works really well with GitHub Pages. So everyone can get their username.github.io, and you get one of those per account. But then you can have unlimited project pages. So I can have, you know, as many different pages as there are repositories, right, on my account. So it's really useful as a kind of, you know, if you wanted to create a personal or professional website, to create really anything that you can think of. It's a really flexible tool. Okay, questions specifically about GitHub? All right. So we'll move on to the very last tool that I have on my list, Scalar. So this one is a little bit different than the others. It's not just a repository in the same sense that the other four have been. Scalar is really designed for long form, so kind of more like books than, you know, articles or blog posts, and media-rich scholarship. So it lets you work with a really wide variety of different multimedia. So you can bring images, and not just store in the way that, you know, you can store images in OSF or GitHub or whatever, but really integrate them into your scholarship. And we can look at a couple of examples to see what that looks like. It is open source. It's created by the Alliance for Networking Visual Culture out of USC. And anyone can use it. It is also free and open source. So you have a couple of options in terms of using it, and we'll look at those two different options in a second. But I have just a couple of use cases here. You can use it to write books, born digital, online, long form, scholarly texts. You could use it to curate digital archives, create digital collections of media. And because it has this really unique pathing system, it's not just like, a traditional website where you go on and you scroll and you see different posts. You can choose how people interact with your Scalar sites, either a linear path or really kind of discursive, iterative circular paths. So you could even create something like a choose your own adventure story in Scalar. So let's go ahead and look at an example. And then we'll come back to talk about the specific things it's really good at. So this is a Scalar book. It is also the user guide. So it's a little meta. They built their user guide in the platform. So if we actually go to another example of a Scalar book, we'll pick this one. We'll see that most Scalar books, when you open them up, you have this kind of landing page, and then you can choose to enter into the site and explore it in different ways. So it can be a very linear experience. You'll see this is page 1 out of 10 for a photographic history of Oregon State University. And if we scroll down, we'll see buttons to kind of continue down the path that the designers of this book have created for people to engage with the materials in this book. But you can also go up, and there's a table of contents for every site that lets people kind of navigate it in different ways. And what's really interesting and really kind of useful about Scalar as a tool that's very different from other publishing platforms is its media integration. So all Scalar books have this index where you can look at all the different pages. Again, paths is a thing that's pretty unique to Scalar. You can design how people move through your book. Doesn't have to be a linear chapter 1, chapter 2. Pages as well as media. So this is actually a list of all of the media items that have been integrated into this Scalar book. And another really unique feature of Scalar is that you can, well, they don't have any, but you can annotate media. So for example, if we go in here, we'll see that this is a media item. We can see where in the book it's from. It's from this section, architectural history and function. But then we can include, all kinds of metadata. And then if we go to tags are just another way of kind of demarcating different content in a Scalar book. We'll see that, oh, that's cool. There's even a map. So there's, this is actually a map of all the different images in the Scalar book. That's really cool. I haven't thoroughly explored this one. So if we, let's see, we go back to that index and we go to tags, we can actually find all of the, images, media in this website that are tagged as people or buildings or different decades. So you set up the tags, you decide what these look like. So just to show you how this can kind of be used to, I don't know. This was a gallery page at some point. Odd. Well, anyways, there's, yeah. You can create galleries, essentially, of different media. So I'm not seeing it anymore. They must have changed this book since I last looked at it. But you can essentially, these are all different media objects. So you can kind of group them together and have them in a gallery view. Okay, let me pop back over into our slides. So again, this is a really useful tool for media-rich websites and long-form kind of interactive narrative sharing of your research or collections, things like that. It can also be used to bring in media from other places online, so not the same way as OSF, because what Scalar is designed to do is, rather than things living in Scalar, things live where they live. They live on YouTube. They live in, something like Calisphere, which is our digital collections website for the University of California, like special collections. And you just link to that content, and you can bring it in. You can organize it in however way you want, but also annotate it. So the annotation is a really unique feature in that you can, bring in videos, and you can have, either yourself or your collaborators or your students or whoever timestamp the videos and annotate them with text. You could even annotate media with other kinds of media. So you could annotate a video with audio files and say at these different points in the video, I'm commenting on it. You can draw on maps. You can annotate images. It's really flexible in terms of media annotation, which is pretty cool. And to come back to how you use this, there's two ways. So you can host your own Scalar sites with all the full functionality and flexibility of this platform, using either locally or using a hosting service like Reclaim. So if you're not familiar with Reclaim, it's a really fantastic academic specific hosting service, right? So you have like GoDaddy and like all those other web hosting services. This one's really geared towards educators and students. So it's a fantastic way to get access to a domain, create all the Scalar sites you want. You can create a dozen Scalar books on a Reclaim account if you wanted to. It's what I use for my own personal professional website. Or you can also request a site that would be hosted by the ANVC. So if you create a site through them, you just request a key. They'll give you a registration key, which allows you to log in and create a Scalar book that will live on their servers. So you don't have to pay anything if you want to use Scalar. It is free to use, and you can use their hosting service. There's just a little more limitations on like the size of media that you can upload if you don't want to bring in media from where it already lives online. There's just a small like file size, upload limit, that kind of thing. But there are options, and it's useful if you wanted to use it for a class and you need keys for all your students. They'll work with you to get that set up. All right. Any questions about using Scalar in particular?